As you know, we're here to discuss the whole business of challenges and opportunities in the Brexit scene, and where innovation might, shall we say, come into play. And I think we probably heard a fair bit this morning about the challenges. So perhaps if we look at the opportunities and see if we can focus in the commentary on the opportunities. So maybe if I could start with yourself and you can introduce yourself and then pass it along, and we catch the comments that way. Thanks very much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Colreevy. I'm the Director of Meat Technology Ireland. And I guess, take a couple of moments to talk about innovation and its role. I've been involved in the business of the commercialization of innovation for over 30 years. The takeaway for me after 30 years is, the key phrase, innovate or die. But that's not the world I've experienced. What I've experienced for the global multinational businesses that invested in innovation and exploited it and leveraged it was they performed exceptionally well. In more recent times, in my role in a state agency in Enterprise Ireland, I would have had a portfolio of companies. We would annually review the business performance of businesses, and the key trend, in line with everything you hear and what I've experienced, is the companies that invest in innovation thrive, and the ones that don't actually go into decline. In terms of Brexit, I think Brexit is an opportunity in terms of changing behaviour. In terms of the meat industry itself, and it wasn't triggered by Brexit, it was triggered by a drive by the industry itself. In Meat Technology Ireland, we have a unique innovation industry-focused platform that should position those companies in terms of dealing with Brexit. And just two examples of that would be we plan to be global leaders in breeding genetics and food quality in meat. And we have to get better shelf life because we've new markets opening up in the States and in China, and we want a fresh chilled product into those markets. So finally, just to round off, I was in Enterprise Ireland when the referendum was announced. You can imagine the day after that, we were surprised as everyone else, as everybody else. But I would have been on the phone to a lot of my clients, particularly the medium to smaller ones who were very exposed to the UK. And I would have talked to a lot of the big buyers in the UK, and specifically the big buyers and those big companies who were saying, we're not panicking over this. What's very important to us is the credibility, sustainability of our suppliers, and what was coming through key was that they deliver what they say they'll do in time, but that they can innovate and they're reliable in that space. So I think there's a few messages in there, and maybe I'll pass on again to...
Absolutely, but just before passing on, amongst all the difficulties and the analysis and so on, is there any bright lights that China... We do import a phenomenal amount of food from the UK. Is there an opportunity for us to do import substitution? And I might say there's something like 3 billion food drink coming in from the UK each year. So is there an opportunity for us to replace some of that?
I'm sure there is. There's a significant percentage, as you said, is imported. I guess the hat that I wear in MTI and the hat I would have worn in Enterprise Ireland is a global hat. We're not interested in replacing a 4 million market with a percentage of that with product substitution. I think the real prize is the opportunities that are opening in the States and in China, and we're clearly positioning Irish beef as through the work of MTI and the state agencies and the companies themselves as being the premium product. In that message is sustainability, and where we can prove our sustainability and deliver more sustainable product than anyone else. So, our DNA in Ireland is global markets. That's the way we think, and I think Brexit is just bringing that into sharp focus again, that we have to look at opportunities and force our behaviour around that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Jens Bleil, Food for Health Ireland. Food for Health Ireland is a consortium of 5 dairy companies in Ireland, amongst which is Kerry, Dairygold, Glanbia, Carberry and Onur, and 7 universities. And the idea and the objective is to develop new food ingredients based on academic research that is relevant for the world market. Now, in the companies that we are working with, and you saw the presentation of Kerry before, there are 3 strategies that these companies are taking in order to mitigate the risk of Brexit. The first one is obviously to look at the supply chain and try to get as many costs and inefficiencies out of the supply chain, just simply to reduce cost. Secondly, you can clearly see that the geographic diversification is a very important one, but also product diversification. And then the third strategy is obviously innovation, because innovation helps the two first elements that I mentioned. But specifically, if you look at the food industry in Ireland, I think innovation can really help to open up new markets, to add value to existing products, and to really find new customers across the world. Obviously, the UK is a very important target market for the Irish dairy companies, but the whole world is open. And I just want to give you one really fantastic example. Look at cheddar cheese. Irish cheddar cheese is exported around about 80% to the UK. However, other markets don't really know so much about cheddar cheese. And we have done some research that shows actually that Irish cheddar cheese is actually very healthy because it is able to reduce cholesterol levels. Now, we don't know exactly why that is. It has probably to do with the food matrix. You know, it's not just the salt and the fat, but it's the peptides in it, it's the calcium, maybe also the element of the grass-fed cow's milk, you know, that helps to make the Irish cheddar cheese so healthy. So why not use that argument coming from innovative research and try to really find new customers in Europe, across the world, in China, and try to promote Irish cheddar cheese in other countries and world markets. So that's just an example of how innovation can really be seen as an opportunity actually to move ahead and maybe even get stronger out of the whole Brexit debate than before.
Thanks, Jens. I was having a round of golf with the Korean ambassador in the K Club yesterday, and he said the Irish dairy is almost unknown in Korea, but Danish dairy is top of the list, and the consumer over there goes for anything with the Danish brand on right across the dairy front. Anything that your group are looking at in terms of we all get the China piece early, but Korea is a big market and they're used to buying European, as I say, the Danish. So are your group looking at that at all?
No, absolutely. The Asian market is a very, very interesting market. Some of our companies, and Cadbury, for example, would be very strongly engaged now in Asian markets. And I think it's a fantastic market. If you look at the dairy consumption in those markets, it's relatively very, very low still. And I think the Irish, again, have a very strong argument because we can really say that our milk comes from grass-fed cow's milk. That's a fantastic argument because it plays to the naturality, it plays to the organic piece, it plays to understanding, where our nutrition comes from. That works very well in China, and there's no reason why that would not work in other Asian markets, but also Europe, for example. In Germany, I'm German, as you can hear, we don't know cheddar cheese. Why not? I think there's a fantastic market, and I think we have all the arguments at hand to open up new markets for Irish produce.
But as you know, building a brand is enormously difficult, particularly on international markets. So a lot of money is going to have to go behind getting the Germans to start eating cheddar. Could we move on?
Thank you. Eamon Burke is my name. I've established Tenno about 5 or 6 years ago. Prior to that, I spent 30 odd years with Kerry, which we've heard quite a bit about this morning. And I suppose within Tenno, our focus is working with clients in terms of qualifying and identifying opportunities for growth in emerging markets and diversifying out of traditional markets. And it's interesting the point that you made there, John, about playing golf, I think it was, with the Korean ambassador, and they not knowing about the Irish dairy industry in Korea, and yet the high level and the very strong position that the Danish industry has. And I guess, in the context of innovation, what does that tell us, really? I mean, the priority, I think, for the Irish industry, whether in Korea or whatever other market we're looking for, is to actually get established. And what role then does innovation play in getting established? It may do in certain markets, it may do with certain customers or certain route to market partners, but it probably in the early stages one has to have that innovation and that capability to innovate. But there's much more focus required in terms of understanding what are the customer needs, what's your route to market partner, what are their needs, how do they understand the trends in the market, because there are very, very well established and entrenched competitors already have strong market shares in those markets, and if we as an industry or as a country are trying to gain market share, gain access to these markets, we need to work very closely with those route to market partners and build the innovation pipeline and our resources behind that, rather than doing it as a solo run, shall we say, and thinking that these guys are going to buy what we've created without any knowledge or insights in terms of what the demands are in those markets.
Eamon, are the smaller markets only for the big, the Kerry groups and the Glanbias, or these far distant markets, the China market and so on, Korean market, or can your organisation provide enough research for these guys to say, here's a market, go for it?
Well, to a large extent, John, it depends on the client. But if you look at food and beverage growth, where's the growth going to be, and where has it been over the last 5 or 10 years? The growth in terms of food and beverage demand is very much driven by the emerging markets. It's not being driven by European or the North American markets. There's changes happening in those markets, but in terms of fundamental volume growth, it's very much driven by the Middle East, to an extent Africa, but very much in terms of the Asian markets, and more than China, I would add. That's where you got GDP growth, that's where you got urbanization, that's where you got the trends towards nutrition and more nutritious diet, and maybe contradictory Western diets and things like that. And that is where the demand is, and that is where we should be playing. I don't think it's a big company play at all. I think in actual fact, and we've seen that in the earlier presentations, the move towards artisan, the move away from big company, and the move towards, be it craft beer or whatever the heck it is more favourable to small independent operators rather than the global food players. So I don't see that as a particular issue compared to where it would have been 10 or 15 years ago.
Thanks, Eamon. Patrick, we always forget the last, shall we say, major sin in the industry and forget about it and move on. Are you worried about anything from the food safety point of view? With all the, shall we say, chops and changes and requests for new innovation, new products. How do you guys stay up to speed with these new fancy products that are coming out?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pat O'Mahony. I'm with the Food Safety Authority, and I suppose for the 18 years I've been there, I've been on the front line of the regulation of innovation. I've been dealing with novel foods, GM foods. So any new food or process or product that comes on the market, it has to go through certain legislation. And I'd like to think maybe Jens can confirm or deny that we would have a green jersey we can pull on when we need to, but we have to work within the regulations as such. There's two topics we're discussing here, Brexit and innovation. I'll talk a bit about both later on in my talk, but in the innovation side, I think there possibly would be a silver lining for certain companies. There's no doubt there will be pain in terms of economics and exchange rates, etc. But we're already having discussions with agencies who work with companies in the UK and further afield who want to bring new products onto the European market. Don't forget there's still 500 million people over there. So now that the UK will be outside of that, they'll be a third country basically. They want somebody who speaks the English language, who knows the run of the mill, should we say. So they're looking to us to, I suppose, do what the Food Standards Agency in the UK used to do. I'm presuming the companies behind them may want to liaise with Irish companies to have a base in Europe. That's only speculation, but I know the agencies are coming chatting to us, so that's one thing. On the Brexit side, we'll get on with it. It's just going to be a change in that we're now going to have on our doorstep a third country. It'll be a little difficult because before we would have planes and boats we could check. Now we have a porous border we're going to have to check, so we probably will have to go to our political masters and ask for more resources because that's just going to be a necessity. But I think technology will help in that respect. So we don't foresee major problems from our side. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. We will, of course, work with the UK regulatory authorities, and that way we should hopefully circumvent any problems that might come along.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody would like to ask anybody on the panel any questions? Okay, just going across, guys. Just looking at, shall we say, March of next year, and assuming it's a hard border, and it's looking hard Brexit, and it's looking more and more like it will be. Boris Johnson is certainly doing nothing to help Theresa May get the Chequers deal across England, never mind trying to help it get across Brussels. So we've a major, shall we say, hard Brexit most likely going to happen next March. So a quick one across, are we expecting the industry to lose 50% of its sales, 10% of its sales, or is the potential for it to gain? So what's the feeling? Is this going to be a major gain or loss for the industry? Want to start, Jens?
Well, if I can speak for the dairy companies, I believe that they're all very well prepared for these Brexit scenarios. We have heard it also before, that there's readiness plans, there's a lot of support from the state agencies like Enterprise Ireland, Bord Bia, and so forth. I believe that the companies are very well prepared. And if you look at Kerry, Glanbia, Dairygold, Carberry, Onur, these are global companies. And of course, they have a lot of business in the UK. But I don't think that will really majorly affect their sales performance. And again, I'm very confident that these companies have picked up innovation. They are diversifying their geographic reach. They are diversifying their product offers. They are going into innovation. And I think that is the way to really go over the Brexit hurdle. So I wouldn't expect a big problem for those companies.
Okay, so there's a plus coming out there. Good news.
In terms of impact and falling off the cliff, I think Michael Bridie put it very well. That no one can absorb 32% plus an extra 48 hours to move product across borders. So that would have a radical impact, there's no doubt about it. In terms of the meat companies, I think, like Jens says, these are multinational businesses. Collectively, the companies in MTI are the 5th largest beef exporters on the planet. So if you're a Tesco, Sainsbury's, or Rinaldi, and you need quite large supply of traceable, consistent quality product, there aren't many players that you can go to deliver that. And also, I think the main players also have a strong footprint and presence in the UK, so they've always had a presence there, so they've kind of hedged forward on that. I think the concentration, again, is on new markets, and it was very interesting to see, for example, ABP conclude a significant deal with one of the biggest online sales businesses in China at the moment. So I think their attention is on stabilising their business as best they can.
I guess you'll become an expert in your organisation and industry in transfer pricing. If you've a plant in England and a plant in Ireland, what price do you charge that? Because obviously that's the price that the new tariff, if it comes in, and it's expected to be something like 40% on meat if they're outside the European Union and we have to ship across to the UK. Is transfer pricing high on the agenda at your meetings these days?
Not in the meetings of MTI because we're a technology centre, but I think there is an element of a crystal ball. I also noted what Michael said also, that given the impact on the food sector and on meat, I'm hopeful of between Westminster and Brussels there'll be a pragmatic solution around avoiding the cliff edge.
You might pass to Damon. So, Eamon, are we in for Armageddon, or is it going to be a Y2K and we'll just breeze through it? What's your feel? Is it going to be a big hit or a small hit or a no hit?
I think it'll be a big hit, and I think it's already happened. I think if you look at
Thanks to the noise outside. You're okay. You just need to bring it a bit closer. I think the noise outside is the problem.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'll be a big hit. I don't see any positives in Brexit for all my own reasons, and I think we've seen some of it already. And if you go back to the first presentation we saw here on Silver Hill, and you think of the amount of time and distraction that it has taken in terms of getting themselves Brexit ready, and clearly they are very much prepared for all the uncertainty that's there. But in the meantime, and not just that company, but what has the Irish industry done to advance and develop its position within the UK market over the last 2 years? Precious little, you would argue. And yet for the last 30, 40, 50 years, the UK market has been a very safe, solid outlet for the Irish food and beverage industry. And unfortunately, we cannot look to any kind of sustainable level of growth in that market over the next 3-5 years without any high degree of risk. And clearly there is a risk there. And I think that's the piece of Brexit that has already happened. Apart from the exchange rate fluctuations, which are obviously hitting the daily performances of the business as well too. So, I think I suppose one of the things that Brexit has certainly put a focus on is our dependence, very very high dependence in the beef and in the dairy, in the cheese industry in particular, to the UK market, and exposing that as a risk and the need to diversify away from being totally dependent on any one particular market.
Thanks, Eamon. Patrick, assuming that you don't get the extra staff that you might feel you need, is your sector or department, are they really ramping up with the technology to keep track of what's going on post-Brexit, or?
I think there's a lot of technology already developed. They're not opening boxes, and I mean, I heard that example earlier of a duck crossing the border 6 times. You know, you can't do that basically. There has to be a scanning technology or whatever. So there are these quick fixes, I think, already in place. We don't have that level of inspection ready. I think the place we might come a cropper is that while we're the food police, there is a police in Brussels that look after us. They're called they used to be called the Food and Veterinary Office. So depending on how the politics of it plays out, if they're all pals at the end of negotiations, then it'll make our life a bit easier. If they're not all pals, then you can be fairly well sure that Brussels will want us to be banging down hard on the imports from the UK and stuff, which is going to make our life a bit difficult, because then we'll have more Food and Veterinary Office inspections. They're just based in Trim, so it's very easy to come in the road. So it's all to play for yet. We'll get on with the job. If we get no resources, we'll just have to drop some things, and we'll just do with what we have, I suppose.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel. If you could show your appreciation for the panel, thank you.